Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going in on a single body of, well, incredibly detailed source material. And we're going to treat it as a forensic chronicle of real events. We won't come out until we've really mapped every corner, every shadow, and, every hidden engine that's driving the action here.
And that's the key, isn't it? This is not a quick summary.
Far from it. This is a surgical examination of a world that, on the surface, can feel absurd or maybe hyper-real. But when you look closely, it operates with this meticulously structured and often very painful logic.
That's absolutely right. Our mission today is to move beyond just the sequence of events, what happened.
Right.
We're treating this material, these chronicles, as a record of extremely high-stakes conflicts. Conflicts where human motivation is either, well, elevated to an almost saintly purpose or it's degraded down to the most primal self-interest.
So we need to be surgical.
We do.
Yeah.
We need to explore the minute-by-minute motivations of everyone involved. We need to get into the interior states they're so desperately trying to conceal and the swift, often brutal power shifts that are happening across three very distinct, very high-tension scenes.
So for you, the listener, this is really a deep dive into the architecture of control.
Exactly. And whether that control is self-imposed through some kind of ritual or if it's, violently imposed by an interrogator.
Okay, so let's unpack that. We have sources covering three wildly different environments, but they're all linked by this theme of extreme pressure.
They are.
First, we get to witness this obsessive, highly pressurized atmosphere around a pre-fundraiser ritual at an elite tennis academy. Routine here is both a shield and maybe a spiritual trap.
Then we have this incredible origin story of an athletic trainer, a man whose whole career was literally founded on a desperate spiritual test of human kindness.
And finally, we confront two parallel crises, both profoundly disturbing, a shocking claustrophobic interrogation designed purely to confirm behavioral predictions.
In a severe crisis of body and spirit, one involving chemical torture in this unbelievably sadistic theater.
This material really demands that we pay excruciatingly close attention to the smallest details, doesn't it? The most visceral stuff.
Because in this world, those small details are not incidental. They are the stress fractures where reality just breaks.
Okay, so we're diving first into the world of the preparatory. We're in the ETA locker room right before this crucial exhibition fete.
This is the moment. This is the collision point. You have the intense, cloistered world of these elite athletes, and it's about to slam right into the world of their wealthy patrons.
Their financial lifeline.
The whole system runs on them. And the sources give us this really detailed list of who usually shows up for this specific gala.
And the list itself feels like a crucial piece of data, It defines the audience that these young athletes are performing for.
It does. It's not just a generic crowd. You've got the usual heavy hitters, the war shavers, and the sources always mention the palsied Mrs. Warshaver.
Right. And the Buckmans, who invariably arrive in their claret-colored Volvo.
And Dr. Hickel and his niece, who is consistently, almost comically described as creepy.
So it's not just a list of donors, it's a detailed sketch of the strange, expectant environment that's waiting for the players upstairs.
That specificity, that almost grotesque detail, the palsied woman, the creepy niece, it immediately sets a tone.
What kind of tone?
A tone of high society intercepting with and maybe even feeding off of this raw athletic talent. These guests aren't just admirers.
No.
They're observers of a spectacle. And their own peculiarities kind of highlight the strange social contract that's at play here. They are the fixed points of the system that the young players have to impress and appease.
So you have this clear vertical stratification. Players are below, the guests arrive above. It's a clear hierarchy of power and visibility.
For now. But the material specifies this profound power shift that happens later in the evening.
After the last matches wind down and the gala proper begins.
Exactly. The guests start as the purely passive audience, watching the competition. But the sources note that once it transitions into the social event, the guests become the participants and performers.
That's a fascinating phrase. It's not just a change in venue, then.
Not at all. It's a deliberate blurring of roles. It implies that the wealthy patrons, the donors, they get to step onto the stage that was previously reserved for the athletic elite.
So the athletes perform these incredible physical feats of skill and endurance, and then the donors get to perform their own social feats of networking and status.
Precisely. It suggests the competitive spirit doesn't just end when the tennis balls stop flying. The control over the narrative of the event is actively transferred.
Away from the disciplined, trained bodies of the athletes.
And into the hands of the donors and society figures, who now perform their own rituals of status display. The implication is pretty clear. The athletes are really only relevant until the spectacle shifts.
And while that transfer of power is waiting to happen upstairs, downstairs, the players are operating on what the source calls pure autopilot.
And their ceremonial preparation is this fascinating study in stress displacement. The sources are so meticulous about the specifics of their routine.
It's where we see this intense, high-stakes pressure being managed through obsessive routines. The process itself is like a liturgy, isn't it?
It is wrapping grips with Gauze-Tex, applying specific powders. It's Fuller's Earth for some players, sawdust for others.
And the necessary shaving and taping, all administered by Barry Loach.
These are not shortcuts. These are psychological anchors. They are physical, tactile ways of asserting control over a body that is about to be placed under maximum stress.
You also get these specific, very telling anecdotes about how different players channel this internal pressure.
Oh, yeah. Take John Wayne, for example. He's hunched over, his head is covered with a towel, like a hood.
It's a posture of just intense, internalized focus.
And he's perpetually running a coin back and forth over his fingers. It's a repetitive, metallic action that grounds him. It's a tiny point of absolute order in a world that's threatening chaos.
And Shaw is doing something similar but different, pinching the flesh between his thumb and first finger.
A form of acupressure. He's anticipating stress, trying to mitigate the headache of competition before it even hits. These routines, they function as necessary scaffolds for their mental state.
And the chaos they're trying to manage isn't just internal. It's being fed by constant rumors from outside the locker room. The rumor antigens are shifting constantly.
The environment is just thick with this low-grade hysteria. There's talk about the formidable Quebec junior team and the severe, potentially match-altering weather.
There's also that strange, quickly debunked rumor about the Quebec team being some kind of special Olympish-ish adult wheelchair contingent.
Which faded after the younger kids who were sent to verify at Jest never returned. These rumors, they destabilize the players' expectations of what they're about to face, which only increases the necessity of their personal rituals.
The most significant rumor, though, pertains to the environment itself, the potential venue change.
Yes. The rumor that the entire event, the matches and the gala, might be moved to the MIT Student Union. And this is reportedly due to mammoth favors called in by Mrs. Incandenza.
And that detail is so crucial because it pulls back the curtain on the instability of their whole system.
It fundamentally proves that the very foundation of their competitive environment, the location, the atmosphere, their home court advantage, all of it can be overturned instantly by the influence of a single powerful patron.
It just strips away any illusion of athletic purity.
Completely. Their dedication, their talent, their preparation, it's all subject to the transactional nature of their lives, where even a critical match location is just a matter of social connections and favors owed to the Incandenza family.
The integrity of the sport is secondary to the needs of the wealthy benefactors.
Which brings us to the real internal anomaly, the most profound break in routine. And it centers on Hal, who is supposed to be receiving his final pre-match preparations from Loach.
And Hal is deeply concerning to everyone. He's broken his customary ritual.
Not eating the customary Snickers bar or the amino pal. And in this hyper-controlled environment, a behavioral deviation like that is a warning siren.
And his face. The description is disturbing, cycling through various expressions ranging from distended hilarity to squenched grimace.
And it's entirely unconnected to anything that was going on. The highly controlled athletic exterior is failing. The inner life is breaking out in this series of nonsensical, involuntary facial tics.
This internal fracture then gets expressed in this moment of truly bizarre spoken tension. It's overheard by his teammates Traub and Whale, who are already remarking on his weirdness.
He asks Loach this question that is just steeped in metaphysical dread.
He asks if the locker room ever felt occluded, electric, as if they all existed as Fourier transforms of postures and little routines.
Stored and call-upable for rebroadcast. It's just a radical expression of alienation.
Okay, hold on. We have to unpack that phrase. Fourier transforms of postures. That is dense technical language.
It is, and it's an excellent point. In mathematics, a Fourier transform is a way to break down a complex waveform, a complicated signal like a song or an image,
Right.
into a series of simple, distinct component frequencies. It allows you to analyze the basic building blocks of a complex entity.
So if you imagine their lives as this complex song, Hal is saying that his life isn't continuous or genuine.
Exactly.
But it's merely a collection of those individual, simplified notes, the little routines, just waiting to be played again.
Precisely. Hal is asking if their whole identity is merely the summation of the required movements, the rituals, the training, the postures, stripped down to basic, repeatable data points.
So if their lives are just Fourier transforms, they're fundamentally reducible.
And, most critically, they are not authentic, continuous experiences. This is the profound terror of the elite competitor.
And the core of the tension for Hal is the terrifying consequence of this feeling, that they are therefore erasable.
Yes. If your existence is merely a broadcast of stored, reducible routines, that implies there's an operator running the program.
And that operator can hit the delete button.
Which raises this huge question about the stakes of existence for these individuals within their demanding, all-consuming system. Hal is voicing the deep dread of the elite athlete. Is my value purely tied to my performance?
If my actions are merely little routines, is the self authentic at all?
Or is it just the summation of the required postures ready to be wiped out when it's no longer needed?
And the sources confirm the terminal nature of this spiritual panic. They note that Traub also unconfirmedly heard Hal use the word moribund.
Moribund, meaning near death or decaying. It suggests that Hal feels the entire system, or maybe his own soul trapped within that system, is already in a state of terminal spiritual decline.
The system demands that he operate as a perfect machine.
But his consciousness has realized the horrific cost of that perfection, the potential non-existence of the self. And as all this intellectual and spiritual dread pours out of him, Loach, the trainer, is just silent through it all.
Utterly focused on the physical mechanics of locking down Hal's ankle for high-level play.
He's focused purely on the posture, not the transform.
And that silence, that focus on the physical, it brings us perfectly to the man whose hands are holding Hal's ankle. Barry Loach. So, head trainer Barry Loach. He's described so vividly as resembling a wingless Flyblunt and Scutley. And he's often just seen as the man who wraps the ankles. But his entire presence here, stabilizing these high-strung athletes, is built on this massive foundation of spiritual conflict, profound despair, and, well, incredible personal risk.
This is truly a chronicle of vocation and desperation. Loach grew up in this enormous, staunch Catholic family, and his mother's fervent, overriding wish was for one of her children to enter the clergy, to serve the church.
But fate, as they say, intervened with his older siblings.
It did. One was lost in a war, one was poisoned, one became a round-card girl at boxing matches, and another a Philharmonic symbolist, so not exactly the path to the priesthood.
So the burden eventually fell to Barry, but he felt his true calling was somewhere else entirely.
He found his vocation not in the abstract worship of souls, but in the physical, immediate needs of the human body. He was called, as the source says, to the liniment and adhesive ministry.
I love that phrase. He was desperate to pursue his training major at Boston College, seeing his future in splints and flexion, not in prayer books.
And he finally got a reprieve. His older brother, who was pious, highly contemplative, and just brimming with this abstract love for humanity, he entered the Jesuit seminary.
Which must have been an enormous weight off Barry's young psyche.
Oh, absolutely. It allowed him to focus on his chosen path. But that relief was very temporary.
Because at age 25, the brother suffers this sudden and dire spiritual decline. He contracts what the sources vividly describe as a black, misanthropic spiritual outlook.
The material uses this incredibly visceral analogy, a degenerative Lou Gehrig's disease of the spirit.
That's powerful. It suggests a systematic terminal deterioration of his faith, of his internal goodness.
The spiritual muscle simply atrophied and died.
And what specifically caused this spiritual atrophy, according to the sources?
It wasn't a failure of doctrine or dogma. It was the crushing weight of reality. It was the grind of practicum work among the human flocks in Boston's nastier downtown venues.
So it was the real world that broke him.
The sheer hopelessness of the conditions he witnessed, the constant struggle against systemic failure, and crucially the intense ingratitude he experienced from the very people he was trying to save.
His abstract theoretical faith just couldn't handle the pressure test.
It spontaneously combusted. His abstract love for the indwelling goodness of all men's souls just died on contact with real human interaction. He retreated, completely cynical, just trying to pitch playing cards into a wastebasket.
And this spiritual collapse puts Barry right back under immense existential pressure.
Right. If the brother bails out of the seminary, Barry is the last son left. He'd be forced to abandon his true vocation, the liniment ministry for the priesthood, just to save their mother from dying of disappointment.
The power dynamic shifts entirely.
And the brother, steeped in his misanthropic despair, weaponizes his cynicism against Barry. He sees Barry's frantic appeals to recover his faith as purely self-interested.
He believes only self-interested #1 looking out is an ineluctable part of the human character.
That word, ineluctable, inescapable, unavoidable. The brother has concluded that selfishness is the foundational human truth.
So he's challenging the very spiritual foundation of Barry's existence. He's comparing Barry's anxiety about his career to the cold commuter just passing the homeless.
And Barry, who is fundamentally an upbeat person, he just doesn't buy this necrotic view of humanity.
Yeah.
So he desperately challenges his brother.
He has to prove that the human character isn't entirely selfish, and the stakes are immense, saving his mother, his own career, and his entire spiritual worldview.
Which leads to the experimental challenge.
And the chosen test is just brutal and highly specific. Barry has to transform himself. He has to make himself look homeless and disreputable and louse-ridden.
And he has to stand outside the Park Street T station. This is the nexus of commuter coldness, where people are focused only on getting from point A to point B.
And here's the critical detail. He has to hold out his hand and ask passersby only to touch him.
Not for money. Not for help. The request is specifically for, viz., extend some basic human warmth and contact. It's a direct challenge to his brother's theory that humanity avoids contact and connection at all costs.
The outcome is, well, it's profoundly tragic in its failure. Weeks and months pass, and Barry is met with systematic, agonizing avoidance.
He fails the core test spectacularly. The respectable citizenry, the commuters with their expensive coats and their cell phones and their book bags, they do not touch him.
They just misinterpret his appeal for contact as a request for cash.
Which is a more socially acceptable form of interaction for them. So they use these bullwhip motions or jagged in and outs to drop change or dollars, avoiding any physical connection, treating the space around him as contagious.
And here's the immense irony. The physical avoidance meant he received abstract charity cash.
And Barry actually started earning an impressive daily total, significantly more than his work-study job at Boston College. He was financially successful, but spiritually failing.
The brother, before he stopped showing up entirely, pointed this out sardonically, didn't he?
He did. He noted the patron's spastic delicacy, and he dismissed the only two exceptions to the rule.
The purely accidental touch of a stumbler.
And the one intentional touch from a bipolarly ill bag lady who put him in a headlock. Neither of those acts proved the indwelling goodness that Barry was seeking. They were either clumsy or unhinged.
So Barry's upbeat view takes these continuous corrosive blows. His soul begins to sprout little fungal patches of necrotic rot.
He becomes so disillusioned and cold that he falls in with the absolute silt of Metro Boston street life. He starts drinking out of brown paper bags. He's close to forgetting his career ambition entirely. The challenge has essentially driven him to the very edge of the spiritual abyss his brother had fallen into.
He was on the brink of losing everything.
His soul, his vocation, his mother's health. The despair lasts for nearly 9 months. His redemption, when it finally arrives, is entirely random and rooted in a very specific brand of innocence found only at the ETA.
The unexpected redemption comes in the form of ETA's own Mario Incandenza. He was only 14, dashing out from a nearby co-op to get subway tokens for one of his father's surreal filming projects.
And the sources stress Mario's complete lack of street smarts in this context. He was largely clueless about anti-STEM defensive strategies outside T-stations.
He had no worldly adult there to explain why you recoil from an outstretched hand in that environment. He was just operating in a state of pure, childlike literalism and trust.
So when Mario sees a scuzzy man with an outstretched hand asking for a touch, he just does it. He performs the simple, literal act of kindness that was requested.
Mario extends his claw-like hand, and touched and heartily shaken Loach's own fuliginous hand.
Fuliginous. Sooty or dark. A hand stained by 9 months of street life and filth. And this single spontaneous act of literal innocence and compassion, unmarred by cynicism or fear or class awareness, it reaffirmed Barry's shattered faith in the indwelling human goodness.
It just cuts through everything, and the immediate consequence of that one handshake is foundational to his career.
Loach, even without the official degree, is hired as an assistant trainer at ETA. The fact that the boy who saved his spiritual life was an Incandenza cemented his place in the system. His life and his ministry of liniment were saved by a moment of pure, uncalculated kindness.
All right, so from the obsessive, contained tension of the ETA locker room, we pivot violently to a scene of sheer psychological and physical terror. The interrogation of Orin, subject #71.
And the first thing that hits you is the setting. It just screams calculated theatricality.
It's designed to establish immediate control and profound disorientation. Orin is inside a huge, inverted, green glass tumbler.
The size of a cage or a small jail cell, but recognizably modeled after a common bathroom gargling cup.
And the light inside is the watery dancing green of extreme ocean depths. It's claustrophobic, surreal, and deeply isolating.
It's an environment that's telling Orin, you are a specimen, not a person. And the physical danger is immediate, beyond just the psychological impact.
The air is clearly limited. The glass sides already have CO2 steam condensing on them, which signals the rapid depletion of breathable air.
And in a desperate attempt to regain some control, he's already tried to break the glass, which is impossibly thick. And in the process, he's likely broken his own foot.
So he's physically trapped, injured, and rapidly running out of oxygen.
And through the thick glass, he sees the faces of his monitors. There are two of them. The latest subject, who is the dexterous and adoring Swiss hand model, and the shy and handicapped fan.
These figures are crucial to the psychological control. We learn later that the subject is Mademoiselle Luria P., and she is playing a very calculated role.
Orin is shouting, trying to communicate, but she ignores him. She just meets his eyes steadily. And this is the moment of the critical power shift.
And how does Orin perceive that shift?
He recognizes that she is now looking at his eyes rather than into them as previously.
Pure objectification.
Yes. The transition from an adoring admirer to a clinical monitor is complete. She no longer sees his internal identity. She sees a specimen. She's transformed him from a person she once idolized into a prisoner under study.
Orin's primary coping mechanism against this profound assault on reality is just deep denial.
He clings to the idea that this experience is a bad dream, which is helped by the sheer bizarre nature of the environment.
And the primary input he receives is this extremely stilted, amplified voice coming periodically through a high, concealed screen.
And the voice demands, "Where is the master buried?" The command is so surreal and incomprehensible, such a non sequitur in this high-tension moment, that Orin is actually grateful for it.
Because it reinforces his delusion.
It reinforces his delusion that this is just a particularly vehement nightmare, which allows him to maintain that critical psychological defense of denial.
But that denial is violently shattered when the screen slides back. And this action, orchestrated by Luria P., proves her clinical understanding of Orin's precise breaking point.
The apex of terror is not the question. It's the physical reality that follows. The screen withdrawal reveals the biological threat. Sewer roaches pouring blackly and shanily through the opening.
The sophisticated, controlled, green-tinged environment of the inverted cup suddenly becomes this hive of urban filth and existential panic.
The threat is not physical pain. It's contamination and horror.
And Orin's immediate, desperate reaction is the ultimate abandonment of his previous role as a protector or a figure in authority.
He splayed itself against the tumbler's glass and shrieked, "Do it to her! Do it to her!"
This is the critical moment. He instantly sacrifices the bystander, the hand model, Luria P., whom he perhaps knew or trusted for immediate self-preservation.
It is the spontaneous betrayal that the interrogators were waiting for.
And the analysis of the intent confirms this was all a test of behavior, not a pursuit of information. Luria P., who we know, preferred the simpler, more pragmatic method of rubber gloves and 2 or 3 minutes alone with the subject's testicles.
She reacts cynically. She inclined her head and rolled her eyes at the AFR leader, presumably the voice demanding the location of the master. She regards the leader as a ham.
Someone overly theatrical and unnecessary.
Which confirms the entire nature of the torture. It was a performance. It was designed to elicit a specific, predicted response. The instantaneous abandonment of all noble pretense in favor of base survival.
Orin's terror and betrayal, though genuinely felt by him, is just stagecraft to Luria P.
His shriek simply confirms a cynical hypothesis about human failure under duress. The immediate consequence is that Orin has been broken down to his most selfish core, proving that the interrogators have achieved complete psychological control over him, even if they haven't gotten the information they claim to seek.
All right, moving to our final and perhaps most intensely detailed chronicle, we find Don Gately.
And the setting here is a luxury apartment, though Gately's perception of it is anything but luxurious. He's in a glowing gray room, physically burning up with fever.
With crib-type railings on the bed that writhed a little like flames in his drug-sick perception.
And Gately is engaged in this profound interior battle against himself. Despite the surrounding chaos of medical staff and his intense physical crisis, feeling like a sun in his head, his only conscious, overriding concern is asking for help to refuse Demerol.
This is the core motivation driving his limited actions. He is fighting his addict nature, trying desperately to gurgle and moo the word addict, even while semi-conscious and desperately sick.
It's a heroic internal struggle for sobriety right in the middle of external calamity.
And the irony he notes is profound. He's the passive object of bedside industry. None of the voices overhead speak to him.
They speak about him. His input, his battle for sobriety, is unrequired by the system that's treating him. He figures he might die, but he notes that it isn't a peaceful release. It's more like trying to pull something heavier than you.
A constant straining resistance against oblivion.
And that medical industry is violently shattered by the arrival of the criminal invasion, heralded first by a Pamela Hoffman Jeep, wildly gesturing in a nearby tree outside the second-floor window.
And then comes Bobby, CC. He arrives with this clear, contemptuous power move, raising a slow two-finger salute to his temple in an impassively mocking hello.
He scans the room. He's visually cataloging the amp allotted and the clear evidence of Gately and Fackelman's massive, near-fatal binging. He establishes his dominance immediately just by assessing the wreckage.
He doesn't bother with the door or any social niceties. C breaks the double-pane window with a fist and a fingerless glove, clambering in with glass caught in his purple hair.
And a vintage Taurus PT 9mm jammed conspicuously in his spiked-studded belt. The invasion is sudden, loud, and absolute.
C's actions upon entering are coldly systematic and ruthlessly professional. He first checks Fackelman, who's still slumped with a syringe in his arm.
He dismisses him as a non-threat, and then approaches Gately. Gately manages to sit up in a defensive posture, only for C to deliver a quick gun-butt blow over the ear with the Taurus PT.
That's immediately followed by a kick to the testicles,
Which C considers SOP to keep your man down.
standard operating procedure for establishing dominance. This quick, brutal display of violence ensures Gately is neutralized and forced into the role of a powerless spectator before C even brings in his full entourage.
And when C returns shortly after, he leads in this overwhelming, ugly, and diverse force.
The entourage is crucial to the power dynamic. It creates a sense of absolute, inescapable doom. It includes Demont and Pointgrave's small-time, brutal Canadian thugs,
Which establishes an international reach of menace. We also see the exomatic pharmacist's assistant, a medical professional carrying the sinister black doctor bag, lending this air of clinical purpose to the sadism.
plus the three big transvestal girls in matching red leather coats, and the two Oriental punks bearing the severely injured PHJ. Her shin is described as a serious mess with bone protruding.
The composition of the group is key. Its diversified force, criminal muscle, clinical expertise, social disruption, and the immediate visual consequence of violence.
C has established immediate control with the initial physical violence, and now cements it with sheer, varied numbers. And then he makes Gately his force confidant.
He puts his arm around Gately's shoulders while proposing a toast of Jack Daniels, forcing intimacy right in the middle of all this terror.
And Gately realizes the full extent of his peril when he notes Whitey Sorkin's pained portrait on the viewer, a mute presiding agony.
This confirms Sorkin isn't coming. C has free rein on this piece of painful business.
And C uses this moment of forced intimacy, this disturbing hug, to offer Gately an escape, a corrupting proposition.
C quietly tells Gately that Sorkin knows Gately wasn't involved in Fackelman's score, and that Gately should kick back and enjoy the party and let Fackelman face his own music.
And then comes the truly cynical warning, appealing directly to Gately's fragile, struggling moral code.
He says, do not let any 19th century notions of defending the weak and pathetic drag Gately into this. C is asking Gately to witness, to acquiesce, and to abandon any glimmer of altruism or loyalty to Fackelman.
It's a deliberate moral test designed to make Gately complicit in the horror.
And the party quickly descends into chemical and physical torture, starting with the necessary prelude to pain. Fackelman, still conscious enough to ask for more Dilaudid, is administered Narcan, the anti-narc.
We should be clear about the chemical detail here. What is the precise consequence of injecting Narcan?
Narcan is an opioid antagonist. Administered via an artery in his neck, it causes a standard flushing clinical reaction.
Yeah.
But its essential purpose here is sadistic.
It reverses the opioid effects.
It reverses the Dilaudid high that Fackelman desperately wants, ensuring he will be entirely aware and receptive to the pain that's about to be inflicted. Awareness is the prerequisite for the sadism that follows.
And at the same time, Gately is restrained. C holds him tight, and the pharmacist's assistant ties him off, preparing Gately for his own forced chemical experience.
C confirms Gately is getting farm-grade sunshine, or Telwyn PX, an intense, short-acting, hard-to-get Canadian blend. And he tells him ominously, hold on to your heart.
Gately watches his own blood ruddle the serum, knowing this is the beginning of an unwanted, violent psychedelic trip. But the ultimate sadistic act happens as he feels the intense drug being booted.
Fackelman starts screaming in agony as the Narcan clears his head.
And Gately sees the grim, librarianish woman kneeling before Fackelman, engaged in this meticulous, horrifying act. She is sewing Fackelman's eyelids open to the skin above his eyebrows.
They're sewing Count Faxel's eyes open.
The cruelty is meticulous. It's designed to force Fackelman into relentless, agonizing observation. He can't blink. He can't escape the spectacle being mounted for him.
His trauma is engineered to be fully visible and unavoidable.
And as this is happening, Gately is hit with the sunshine. The potent drug crosses the blood-brain barrier, and the room changes instantly. The air gets overclear, a glycerin shine, colors brightening terribly.
He is thrust into a massive psychedelic descent, entirely against his will, forced to witness the degradation of his friend in terrifying HD clarity.
And adding to the torture is C's choice of auditory accompaniment. C puts on this incredibly depressing, sadistic CD.
Linda McCartney's terrible, lost, off-key backup vocals, isolated entirely from the slick mix of her husband's band.
That is such a specific, bizarre detail. Why is this isolated track unspeakably depressing? And why does Gately see it as sadism, like drilling a peephole in the wall of a handicapped bathroom?
Because the music is stripped down, ugly, and exposed. It forces the listener to confront the lost, incompetent, weak voice that was meant to be buried, protected, and concealed within the commercial polish of the final mix.
It's exposing a profound hidden failure.
Which perfectly mirrors the systematic stripping away of dignity in the room itself, where failure and pain are being brought to the forefront for forced observation.
As the drug peaks, C starts to let Gately down easy, moving around him like a dancer. And Gately notes C's surprising strength and gentleness, which is a disturbing paradox in the middle of this horror.
C is the conductor, the master of ceremonies. He's maintaining this strange, tragic intimacy with Gately, even as he orchestrates the maximum sadism against Fackelman.
Gately gets this rotary view of the entire room, now hyper-focused. He sees Point Grav vomiting from the whore and the librarian starting on Fackelman's other eye.
And the final rotating sight is the return of the two Oriental punks, who are bearing big, shiny squares of the room.
And Gately understands instantly. The sadism cartridge, the one about ultraviolence and held-open eyes, is being stretched toward Fackelman, and they are bringing mirrors.
The intention is chillingly clear. Fackelman must watch his own torture. And the immediate consequence for Gately, as the floor wafted up and C's grip finally gave,
is looking into one of those squares and seeing the reflection of his own big, square, pale head with its eyes closing. The floor pounced. He wakes up later, flat on his back, on a freezing, raining beach, far away from the apartment.
Drugged, beaten, and displaced. A violent, systemic rejection of his efforts toward recovery.
What's so fascinating here is the sheer consistency across these three distinct chronicles, despite the wildly different settings.
It is. In the ETA locker room, in Orin's green glass cage, and in Gately's medical apartment, we see this deliberate, systematic stripping away of dignity, of routine, of self-possession.
The focus is always on control, isn't it? Using ritual, denial, and pain to break the individual's perceived reality.
Whether it's the bureaucratic confusion of a venue change, exposing the athletes as reducible, erasable routines,
or Orin's self-image being annihilated by that forced, predicted betrayal.
Or Gately's sanctity of recovery being destroyed by engineered chemical means. The mechanism is always the same. The system forces the individual to confront their utter lack of control.
The material shows us that even in moments of extreme chaos or crisis, the power dynamics remain meticulously structured.
There is always someone designing the stage and predicting the screen. Luria P anticipates Orin's shriek of betrayal. Bobby C designs a precise sequence of pain, using Narcan to guarantee awareness before the horrific visual of the sewing.
Cruelty, in this world, is a complex, engineered product.
And Gately's final consequence, waking up displaced on a freezing beach, epitomizes this systemic assault. His attempt at ethical survival, His fight for sobriety has been violently nullified, and he is jettisoned from the social scene entirely.
Which brings us back full circle to the desperation of Barry Loach, the trainer.
He spent 9 months of his life trying to solicit a single, spontaneous act of basic human kindness to prove humanity has an indwelling goodness.
And he was repeatedly met not with connection, but with spastic delicacy and the substitution of cold cash for warm contact.
His spiritual life, his vocation, were saved by a clueless teenager, Mario Incandenza, who simply didn't know better than to be kind. That clueless, spontaneous goodness cut through the cynicism of the city's underbelly and the sophisticated misanthropy of the Jesuit brother.
And that is the essential, terrifying friction of these chronicles. We've seen the extremes of calculated degradation faced by Orin and Gately, where every action is structured by malice and control.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've seen cruelty elevated to high art. We've seen systems designed to predict and enforce failure.
The final provocative thought for you to consider is this. Given the depth and systematic nature of the degradation faced by Orin and Gately, what singular, spontaneous act of basic human kindness, like Mario Incandenza's risk-taking, completely uncalculated handshake, could possibly survive and thrive in a world so profoundly structured by systems of control and cruelty? And if it can survive, how do you recognize it before the cynicism takes hold?